Hello everyone, welcome to this course. In this course, we are going to have an introduction to numeric data types in Python. So the first one that we would like to talk about is an integer. So an integer means a whole number with no decimal points. It means, for example, number 1, number 10, number 20. Any numbers with no decimal point, they are integers. Secondly, we would like to talk about float numbers, numbers with decimals, and they can represent fractions. For example, 3.14 or 5.20. These numbers are float numbers. In order to declare numbers and assign them to a variable in Python, we simply write down the name of the variable, an equals sign, and then we are assigning a number to that variable. So for example, here I am initializing a variable called x, and I'm assigning number 10 to this x variable. And here also I am initializing one variable called y, and I'm assigning 3.14 to y. So based on our definition of integers and floats, we understand that x is an integer variable because an integer value is assigned to it, and y is a float variable because a float variable value is assigned to it. By the way, if we want to comment something in Python, we need to have this pound sign before that. For example, when I am writing something after the pound sign, for example, hello from Python, and because we are having a pound sign here before that, it means that it's a comment. So compiler is not going to understand and read these parts. These parts are mainly provided between developers. So if I am developing a code for myself, I can have these comments throughout the code in order for me to have a better understanding of this code. For example, after 2 years, when I come back to my code, I may not remember all the details, but by writing down comments, I can read the comments and it helps me to understand the code better. And also, if I want to, for example, pass this code to another developer, that developer can understand my code better if I'm having some comments in the code. So all these parts that are shown in green are comments, and compiler has nothing to do with them. However, the rest of the code, as you see here, are shown with different colors, and therefore compiler is treating them as something to work with. So here I am initializing one x variable equals to 10 and one y variable equals to 3.14. However, if I would like to see these variables in the output, I can simply print them. So let me comment these parts. So when I type down the print keyword and I type down the x, and when I compile, I see in the output that number 10 is being printed out in the output. So basically, I'm telling the compiler to print the variable x value for me in the output, and it is showing me the variable value. And if I want to print y, I type down the keyword, and within parentheses, I'm typing down the data type, the name of the variable, sorry, and it is going to print that. So when I compile again, I see 10 and 3.14, which are the values for x and y respectively. But when I see this, maybe it would be nice to have some explanation. So now I comment these two lines using a pound sign, and I uncomment this part by printing out by removing the pound sign. And in order for me to have a better understanding of my output, because I may have the print sign for 10 lines, so I would like to have something to be printed out before the variable value, so I can easily recognize which number represents which variable. So I'm adding a comment here. For example, I'm typing down the print keyword, and within parentheses, I have two parts and they are separated by a comma. In the first part, in the code, I'm having x equals, and then in the second part, I'm typing down the name of my variable, which is x, and I'm in the second line, I'm having y equals, and separated by a comma from the second part in the parentheses, which is the name of the variable that I would like to print. So when I run this code, you see this time it prints for me x equals and then 10, y equals 3.14. So when I have, for example, 100 lines to be printed, I don't have to remember, okay, 10 was the number of which variable, so I need to go back to in the code and check, etc. Instead of that, I can simply print this text in the terminal so I understand 10 is the value that represents variable x and also y equals 3.14. So in this video, we learned about integers and float data types in Python, and we learned how to print them in the output. And also we learned how to comment some parts that compiler has nothing to do with them. For example, now the compiler is not printing this part because there is a pound sign behind that. But if I uncomment this part and I compile, I see 10. Let me go up a bit. Okay, I see 10. Then I see x equals 10, y equals 3.14. So this is being printed, which is this 10 number, because it is printing x, and x is equal to 10. Sorry, I went up too much. And then I'm having this line being printed out, and then this line being printed out. But this line is not being printed out because there is a pound sign there. So if I remove the pound sign and I compile, I see that now I see that 3.14 is now being also printed out in the output. Thank you for watching. In the next videos, we are going to have some coding exercises with respect to initializing and declaring integer variables and float variables. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to talk about strings. So a string is a sequence of characters enclosed in quotes. A string can include letters, numbers, symbols, or spaces. So in order to initialize one string, I am giving it a name r equals, and in quotes, I'm having the string that I want. It is, for example, in this case, Reza Shahin. So a variable r is assigned a string, and this string is Reza Shahin. I can have another string, for example, it could be hello world. So this is my second string, and I can also print x for myself. So when I run the code, I see that first I'm printing the string r, which is Reza Shahin, and then I'm printing x variable, which is another string, and it is hello world, and hello world is being printed out here. As you see, also the space between these two words are included. So basically, whatever that is included between the quotes is going to be considered in the string. So this is how we declare and we print out one string in Python. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In today's video, we are going to work with type checking. So we can have different types of variables, for example, integers or floats. In this case, I'm declaring x equals 10, y equals to 3.14. But however, what would happen if I want to know exactly their type to be explicitly mentioned in the output? To do that, we need to use the type function. Okay, so in order to know the data type of x and data type of y, I'm going to use the print keyword, and within parentheses, I'm going to use the type function. Type we use the type keyword, and then I'm having the variable in the parentheses that I want to know the type of. So here, when I run the code, we see that class int and class float is being printed here. It means that the first one is, which is x, is an integer, and the second one, which is y, is a float data type. So basically, we used to use the print function like this. So it was going to print out the x for us. Okay. So now I'm using this function, type function, to know the type of my variable. And which variable? Okay, I want to know the type of x variable, or I want to know the type of y variable. Okay, this is how we can ask the compiler to give us the variable type of different variables. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to again talk about type conversion. Previously, we learned that we can use, for example, int function or float function to convert any other types of variables to an integer or to a float. Here, I'm printing out the variables like this. So I'm having the print keyword, and within parentheses, I'm having float 5. Within parentheses, I'm having 5. So I would like number 5 to be printed out as a float number. And also, I would like to print out the value 3.14 to be printed out as an integer. So when I run this code, I see this output. So number 5 is being printed out like this, like 5.0. It is being printed out with 10 decimal, so it is now a float number. And also the number 3.14, which was originally a float number, is now being printed out only 3. So we converted it into an integer. How? Using this int function. So we put the 3.14 number in the parentheses of integer function, and it is going to basically removes the decimal part and only keep this part, which is going to be an integer in the output. So in this video, we reviewed how we can have a type conversion. We could also have, for example, x equals 5.45 and then print. And in this part, we could have, for example, int and x. So x is a variable equals 5.45. So it's a float variable. Okay. So it's a float variable. And now I'm going to convert it to an integer. How? I'm printing out the value of variable x that is converted to an integer. So I'm having a print keyword and then 2 parentheses, and within the parentheses, I'm having the int function and 1 parenthesis. And in the parentheses of int, I'm having the name of the variable x. So when I run this code now, we see that 5 is being printed out. Why? Because it was originally a float number, 5.45, and this decimal part is being removed, and only this integer part is being kept. So in the output, we are having the number 5 here. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this video, we are going to talk about arithmetic operators. So we are going to discuss addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. In order to do that, we can have the print keyword, and in the parentheses, we can have the numbers, for example, 5 plus 3 or 10 divided by 4. I run the code now. We see the output 5 plus 3, the output is 8. And we are having 10 divided by 4. The output is 2.5. We could also have this message being shown. So for example, sum of 5 and 3 is this message being shown out. And we could also have the division of 10 by 4 is, so if I have this message, it's more clear in the output to understand the 8 came from where. Okay, the sum of 5 and 3 is 8. The division of 10 by 4 is 2.5, okay? And another way to have these is like this. So x equals 10, for example, y equals 4. Let me just choose another number. So y equals 4. Now I could have, for example, z equals x plus y, h equals x minus y, for example. We could have, for example, q equals x multiplied by y, and w equals x divided by y. And then I could print out their values. So let me use this keyword. So I can have this. The first one is z, then h, q, and w. And I could have the message, the sum of x and y. I could have this sorry, I forgot the code. The subtraction of x and y, the multiplication of x and y, and we could have it here, the division of x and y. So let me explain what I did here. So what previously we were printing out the sum directly using the numbers, but I would like to use variables in the print out keyword function. So for example, variable z, print variable z, h, q, or w. To do that, I'm declaring x and y. X equals 10, 20, and y equals 5. I'm having z equals x plus y. So 20 plus 5 is going to be assigned to z. We expect it to be 25. And then I'm having x minus y is assigned to a variable named h. So 20 minus 5, we expect it would be 15, and x multiplied by y, its value is assigned to q, and we expect to see 100 here, and also x divided by 5, the output we expect it to be 4, is assigned to w. And we are going to print the sum of x and y, and we are going to print x, which is this part. Then the subtraction of x and y, which is this part, we're going to print h. We're going to print q to be the multiplication of x and y, and w to be x divided by y. So when I run this code, so let me print out, let me comment this part so we don't see them in the output. So we are having the sum of x and y, 25, which we expected here. The subtraction of x and y, which is 15, 15 is here. The multiplication of x and y is 100. And then the division of x and y, 4. So we see that here we could do some arithmetic operations using variables and direct numbers here. So this is basically how we do mathematical operations in Python. And it's a very good example, I think, for you to start coding as of these videos that we just started, because it would be nice to start coding and get used to the syntaxes and start to see if you're making any mistakes or not. And if you're making any mistakes, check your code with the code that I'm providing for you, and you will understand where the error comes from, and then you can improve from there. So I would suggest you to start coding right away so you get used to all the syntaxes. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to work with floor division. So floor division is going to round down to the nearest whole number. For example, when I have 10 divided by 3 and using the floor division, the output is 3. However, if I have the print 10 divided by 3, we see the output and it is 3.33, for example. Okay, so to do the division we are going to use the slash sign, but if we want to have floor division we are going to have slash slash, so double slashes. Basically this floor division is going to round down to the nearest whole number, to the nearest integer value. So you see that 10 is divided by 3 is 3.33. So it is 3.33 and it is rounded down to 3 now because we see the output here. Okay, so in order to give you another example, we could have like 11 and we could have, for example, I don't know, for example 3, and we could have the output x divided by y and then print the x floor division by y. So if I have this they're having the same value. I wanted to have another number but it's okay. So let me have it like 20, like 3. Okay, so x is 23, y is 3. So when I print the x divided by y, we are having the number 7.66. However, when I have the floor division of x by y, I'm having the number 7. Basically, the floor division is shown by slash slash, as you see here, or as you see here, and it is going to round down the output of the division to the nearest integer value. Okay, round down. This is why even 7.66 is rounded down to 7. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture. In today's video, we're going to learn how to read information from the user through the terminal. So here I'm firstly initializing, I'm declaring one variable called integer value. And basically I'm assigning this to my variable. But what is this line? So using the input function, let me have the comment here. Using input function, I'm getting the input from the user. Okay, so using this function, this keyword that is reserved in Python, we can get input from the user, and by default it is a string. When we get it from the user, by default we get something as a string. And then I'm having my int parentheses. It is going to convert the string into an integer value. So given this explanation, I'm assigning the integer value that is declared here one input, and in the input and in the first parenthesis, in this part I mean, you see the message saying that enter an integer, and then the user is going to enter a number, and that number is going to be stored firstly as a string because this is a default by Python. And using the int function, I'm going to convert that string into a number. So let me run the code first before giving you another example, so it would be more tangible, I think, for you. So when I run this code, this message is shown in the terminal. Enter an integer. Exactly this message is being shown here. As you see, the program is ongoing because it is waiting for me to enter something. Okay. So integer value, and you see this green point here, it says that the program is in this line. So integer value variable is declared here, and the value that is going to be assigned to this variable is the following. We are asking the user to enter an integer that is shown in the terminal, and whatever that I enter here is going to be stored as one string by default. And then using this int function, which I explained here, I'm going to convert that string into an integer. So let me type down. So when I type down 40, it is going to print you entered the integer and then 40. Why? Because I'm having a print function here also, and I'm having this message for the first part separated by a comma from the second part. So in the first part, I'm showing the message you entered the integer, so you entered the integer. And in the second part, I'm having the name of my variable integer underline or underscore value, which is here. Okay, so using the input, I'm getting some information from the user, and because it is by default a string and I want it to be an integer because I would like to read an integer from the user, I'm converting that string to integer using this int function. Okay, so the second example here is the following. So I'm having another variable called float value, and I'm going to show the message enter a float using the input again function. Okay, and then whatever, as you know, whatever that is entered by the user is by default defined to be a string. It is something, it is a rule of Python. Okay, and using the float function, I'm going to convert that string that is stored from the user into a float variable, and that is going to be assigned to this float value variable. Okay, so firstly I am getting the input from the user, then since it is by default stored as a string, I need to convert it to a float because I am looking for a float. If I was looking for an integer, I was going to convert it to an integer. Okay, so and then the entered value is converted to a float number, and that is going to be assigned to float value variable. Okay, so we are going to get an input from the user, and then I'm going to convert it to a float, and then I'm going to have that float number in the final stage being assigned to my variable, and this variable name is float value. It could be x, it could be y, it could be anything. So let me type down simply x here. Okay, it is x. So x equals this, and then I'm printing out using the print function keyword, I'm printing out you entered the float and a comma and then x. So when I run this code now, it asks me for an integer. I enter 12 and it says you entered the integer 12. Okay, and now it is asking enter a float. I'm saying 3.16, and it is mentioning that you entered the float 3.16. So in this video, we learned that we need to use the input function to get some information from the user, to show the message to the user and store it, and it is by default stored as a string. If we want to have an integer, we need to convert it to an integer. If we want to have a float, we need to convert it to a float, because by default it is a string. In order to convert it to an integer, we use the int and parentheses, and within parentheses we put whatever we want, which is the input in this case from the user. And we have the, if we want to convert it to a float, we are going to use this float function parentheses. So for example, I can have int and input. So this is how this is going to work. Int and these parentheses, these two parentheses, and then input with the corresponding parentheses. In the input, I'm going to show, for example, write quotes saying that enter an integer for me. Okay. And then the user is going to enter something. It is stored in this part using this input function, and whatever that is stored, because it is in the parentheses of int function, because we're having one int keyword here and one parenthesis in the left and one parenthesis in the right. So whatever that is inside it, it is going to be converted from the string that is by default to an integer. The same rule goes with the float. Thank you for watching.